we've already talked a little bit, but welcome everyone. Thanks for making the time today to join this webinar. It's been a very exciting week for the solar industry in Canada, that's for sure, with the ITC being launched or being put officially in the budget of 30%. So super exciting thing happening here. Definitely going to make this industry explode even more than it already has. We actually will have an open house coming up, a warehouse show in Ontario for anyone that wants to join at the end of April. So feel free to sign up if you don't know how to sign up. I think Hazine can put in the link in the chat here. As to how as Mike will do his presentation, there may be some questions that come up. I've already posted in the chat that you can ask questions there as they come up, and I'll ask them between slides. Alternatively, you can also unmute yourself between slides when Mike has a quick break, and you can ask a question at that point as well. So that being said, Mike, he's working for LONGi Solar, and he would do the presentation now. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much, Danny, and thank you very much, Franken, for supporting us and working with us in the Canadian industry here. It's a growing and burgeoning industry in general, and LONGi is very excited to be part of that here in Canada. And thank you for all your efforts. We definitely appreciate it. I guess really I wanted to start by sort of introducing LONGi as a whole, because for a lot of people prior to, let's say, 2018 in Canada, they didn't really even understand that LONGi existed at all. But they've been working away in the background since 2000. And so part of my presentation is to sort of give you a little bit of an idea of the depth of LONGi and how we support the industry and try to work into a long-term kind of mutually beneficial relationship in different countries and with distributors and dealers across the globe. So without further ado, I'll just kind of introduce LONGi myself first. I guess we'll just kind of work on that. Myself, I've been in the industry for about 22 years at this point, and I started working with LONGi here in Canada in 2018. And at that time, as I mentioned, pretty much nobody had heard about LONGi at all in the industry here. So from that point, we've kind of grown kind of exponentially here in the Canadian market, both on the distribution side, we call it DG, distribution and residential side, and commercial, as well as utility. And so, utility has grown massively, as everybody knows, in Alberta. And it kind of slowed down a little bit in Ontario. But as the utility side slowed down in Ontario, then of course you're starting to see the commercial rooftop side growing dramatically, which is great. And as Danny just mentioned, with the ITC and the 30% announcement, you're going to start to see some explosive growth again, which is fantastic.
Yeah, we've already seen, even it's funny. Everyone was always talking about Ontario being such a bad market over the last few years, but I think for us, and yes, we're located in Ontario, obviously, that's our headquarters, but it's always been the busiest market for us overall as far as numbers sold. We've been quite busy, however, still in out west, the market's exploded, right? Alberta specifically, Saskatchewan, Manitoba had some really busy times as well. And BC is become bigger and bigger as well, even without really an incentive program out there. And then the same goes for the East Coast. We've been really busy in Nova Scotia specifically. Obviously, it's one of the busiest markets in Canada in residential solar, and now also starting into the commercial side of things. And there's also some other provinces where we see a fair bit. New Brunswick, Newfoundland come to mind. So Yeah, it's really exciting to see the industry grow over the last, I guess I've been in the industry, what, 10 years now or so. So it's awesome to see that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, LONGi has noticed kind of explosive growth with Franken, pretty much in every province. So kudos, you've really obviously made your mark, pretty much in every province and territory across Canada.
We always say
Um,
we're
and
coast to coast to coast, right? Even one of our
you
bigger
are,
customers is up in
Y-
Yukon, right? So,
yeah.
so we're the industry is definitely a nationwide industry now. So, yeah,
Yeah, and
but,
I think it takes all of us to kind of make that happen together, and
100%.
kind of support each other to make sure, okay, there's some gaps or whatever needs to be filled in these areas, whether that's a technology gap or whether that's a funding gap or
Yeah,
what have you. But it takes all of us to make it happen because at the end of the day, we're all in this industry because we have a passion for it. It's the end
100%.
of we could be in all kinds of different industries, but we've chosen this one. So I think
Great.
I think at the heart of all of that, we need to kind of keep that in mind. Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. So to give a little bit of background about LONGi. So LONGi actually was formulated in 2000. Even though I started on with them, and that's actually when I started in the solar industry too. So LONGi was formed in 2000, and they started originally as a cell and wafer manufacturer in 2000. And since that time, they've grown to over, 50,000 employees globally. And they did over 12 billion in revenue in 2021. And you can kind of see from the slide there that it just like they have probably some of the best net profit in the industry, and that doesn't mean that they're greedy. It means that they've refined their process to a point where they're sustainably able to grow with the industry,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very big differentiator, because we've kind of found the secret sauce of how to support our clients properly globally, and still be on able to maintain a healthy profit. Because if you don't maintain that healthy profit, then you can't support your clients globally. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword. You have to find that happy medium. And for us as well, then that means that we're dedicated to spending a great deal of time and money into research and development to make sure that we do stay at that leading forefront, compared to even our competitors. So the number you see there for research and development of 689 million for 2021, to put that in perspective, that's more research dollars than our top five competitors combined. So that kind of gives a little bit of an idea of how dedicated we are to the industry and what it is we're trying to achieve. Um, and again, as you read through, you look at the main points here of steadfast and reliable technology leadership. That's like who we are, to the core. So we're always looking to make sure that we're at the pinnacle of that, and making sure that our quality is second to none, and that we're looking for new technologies that are going to help kind of propel us to a green future,
Yeah.
and carbon zero development. And then if you look at the first half of 2022, you can see over 7.5 billion in operating income and 966 million for net profit. So that's just in the first half. So you can see year over year, there's some really good growth there. Yeah. So just to kind of put a little bit of that in perspective, LONGi is um, the industry lead when it comes to standardizing on wafer sizing, as well as come up with several different technologies that are just adopted by the industry globally at this point. So we have we shipped over 70 gigawatts of wafers in 2021, and we have the capacity to ship over 150 gigawatts. So we're always planning for the future. and we are the largest shipper of wafers globally.
Yeah, I think
So
this is a really, really important part to talk about because
yeah,
first and foremost, you guys started as a wafer company, right? Until which year did you start making solar panels?
in 2014. Yeah.
2014. So before that, you were the largest wafer manufacturer globally, and you just sold wafers to pretty much most solar companies out there. And now you also started producing your modules. However, in that also means you're still selling wafers, right, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
we support the entire industry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you may buy a module from another manufacturer, and it actually has LONGi cells in there. So that is actually quite common. Um, and you may have used, even if you have never installed a LONGi solar panel until now, you still may very likely have used a LONGi product.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. So, and that kind of gives an idea of where we're at, where we in 2021 shipped, like 38 gigawatts of modules globally, but we have 85 gigawatts of module capacity as well as back to the cell and wafer side. We have quite a bit more than we use within the industry, and that's not common for industry players or our competitors. So they would either only procure the cells that they require or the wafers that they require for their actual module production. But in our case, part of the reason why we're so stable financially is because we're so diversified and so fully vertically integrated. So that is part of what clients can count on for future resiliency when it comes to warranties or quality control or anything like that, because we have to control the entire process from start to finish and lead the industry with regard to technology. Then we have to research and make sure that this product is going to have that longevity to make it all the way through the different steps of the market. It's critical because we're not just dealing with our piece of the market, which is, let's say, modules. We're dealing with making sure that our competitors are also getting these high quality products and cells that we produce, right? So it's a much deeper, ground rooted, vertically integrated picture than most companies are dealing with. Yeah. And so this is just to kind of give a little bit more of an idea of kind of like what we do when it comes to research and development and the institutes that we work with and the partners that we work with when it comes to doing our research and making sure that the products that we're developing and putting out into the industry are of the highest possible quality with the best possible costs. And so, obviously, what comes with doing the type of volume that we do is the ability to produce the product at very, well-priced modules coming out at that point. And to, in the past 10 years alone, we've put over 1.5 billion into research and development of the product for the industry and for LONGi. Because we always have to think about who our clients are. And yes, technically on the module side, they would be competitors at this point, but we don't necessarily look at our competitors as competitors within the industry as it pertains to cells and wafers. We have a responsibility to making sure that they're they're given the same standards as we uphold.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see here that there's been huge increases year over year in our research and development, and it's nearly a requirement at this point, based on our responsibility within the marketplace. Yeah.
I would say probably pretty much all the other solar panel manufacturers probably have bought solar cells from you guys over the years, right?
I would say most likely yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't say for sure, but
Yeah, of course.
there's a really, really high possibility. Yeah. Yeah. So, and part of that is just to sort of give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of goes into that. And then this gives a little bit of an idea of the timeline here on this slide to sort of some of the technologies and what the development has been so far in a sequential way.
Yeah, and
And
I'm
so you can,
sorry, just jumping in here quickly. And I think, as we
yeah,
close up that part about who LONGi is, and I thought it was really important that you talk about it because we don't talk nearly enough about, you know, just how big of a player LONGi is. And many of our customers and solar installers out there, they may not fully understand um, who LONGi is, right? And when you're talking to a potential end customer about, LONGi versus another brand, and the other brand may be, sexier or whatever to the end customer for whatever reason. I think it's important to have some tools in play to talk to the end customer about who LONGi actually is and how big of a player and how important they are to this industry.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to note, and it sort of gives you a bit of an idea, considering, as an example, to your point, that nobody really knew who LONGi was in Canada in 2018. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure not one customer.
I know I didn't. I didn't. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I did. I
And
remember you were all of a sudden showed up with one of our competitors, and like, who is this LONGi company? And then you sort of slowly hear about it, and we talk to people in Europe, and then they're like, oh yeah, they've been here for a while, and we find out piece by piece a little bit more about you guys, and the it's definitely now that we have pretty close to a full picture, you guys are quite important and have been around for a very long time.
yes, yeah, like I'm I'm not 100% sure of the how the numbers are going to pan out for 2023, but most likely in excess of 600 megawatts for Canada,
Yeah,
from zero sales in 2018.
yeah,
So I think we're definitely becoming very accepted, and I think at this point, people are starting to understand our ability to deliver
yeah,
quality product and make true on our promises, really. So if something goes wrong, whatever that case may be globally, stuff that we can't even control, whether it's pandemics or what have you, we will try and make sure that projects move forward regardless, right?
yeah,
Um, and this chart just really kind of gives you a bit of a sequential order of like what the development process has been over the years and how we're kind of like transitioning away from a standard M6 wafer to, where we're at
mhm,
today, which started really in 2020, but now you're starting to see it as mainstream,
yeah,
there's been quite a bit of back and forth between M6 and M10, but as goes availability within the marketplace, M6 is just not available as a cell, unless it's old stock at this point. And that's probably why, as different dealers look at distribution, they're starting to find that they just can't get the M6 cells anymore. Um, and
yeah. And
and
we know they're
Longi's,
quite
yeah,
popular, right? I mean, a lot of
of course,
resi
they're a beautiful
people,
mod.
and as well as and then also for commercial, like, people really like to standardize around that 450-watt module, and we're talking to people, and we've been telling people for a while now that that won't be available. Um, it's unfortunate, but that's the solar industry. It's such a fast-moving industry, and we're always trying to improve things, right? And overall, the M10 and the larger cell has a lot of benefits, right?
Yeah,
Less, percentage-wise, there's less gaps between cells, for example, or it's the same amount of gaps, but percentage-wise of the overall panel, you will be able to increase your efficiency by having less gaps per
yeah,
square meter. So there's definitely some advantages on that. And also people like higher wattage panels. So
Yeah.
that's something that's achievable with an M10 and not an M6.
Yeah. And you can sort of see here from that transition 2019 to 2021, you can sort of see this is part of LONGi's vetting process, essentially, and quality control as well as R&D. We take our time to bring in new technology over a period of time and make sure that it's vetted properly throughout the entire chain and process, right? Whether that's breakability or quality control for wind and snow testing, whether that's shipping globally, logistics, all the way through the different components that make up the module, as well as how it's perceived in the marketplace. And so we try and make that transition happen over a kind of a staged period of time so that there's proper acceptance within the marketplace. And then also so that you can get the supporting products that surround that as well. So we we always try and kind of think about those things as we're kind of bringing out a new product into the industry. Yeah, so this is just a little bit of a follow along from the previous slide that kind of gives you an idea of the millimeter size on these cells to kind of put it into perspective of sort of where we were and where we're moving towards. As goes the cell size. And so we're moving into that M10, that 182 millimeter cell. And for now, and it's available at this point in a number of different products that we offer. So the format naturally has to change if you're still going to have a similar amount or number of cells wide in the module, then obviously the width of the module is going to change a little, and then it's going to change in length similarly. And that's sort of where we started there, Danny, at the beginning before the
Correct. Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah.
It it is a transition for rails, for all kinds of different things.
Inverters, it's big too, right? That it always affects current
Voltage.
as well as
Yeah,
voltage, right? The voltage probably less so because that's
yeah.
based on number of cells, more so than the size, but the current, it's a huge effect on current on the solar module.
Yeah, and even having the, transitioning over from, to two split cells was a huge transition.
That was a
And
big one, yeah.
that kind yeah, like that one happened in 2018, 19, and so
Yep.
uh,
I still
like
remember it was that we were carrying the product REC at the time. It was before we were working with you guys,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they were the first ones to have a split cell module. And I think at the time some people didn't like it, and I think some people still don't like it because the junction box in the middle. But I told everyone, just wait, all the panels will have this soon.
yeah.
It has a number of advantages. So, sure enough, that actually did happen. I don't think now I've even seen by one of your competitors has a third of a cell panel. Um, it gets a little bit ridiculous at one point. I don't know if we'll have like eight at one point, but yeah, definitely something we're seeing.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's the same. For example, with the G12 that's on the slide here with the 210 millimeter. From LONGi's perspective, we may end up there, but we're never, and we, as goes production for competitors, sure. But from our perspective, as goes global, uh, sending this out into the industry, we always want to make sure that it's vetted from our side.
Yeah.
Least amount of potential for damage, best possible manufacturing around the frame as well to make supports for that. So we don't really allow anything from our side out into the industry as goes a full product, especially on the module side, without considering all of those different things. So we're kind of stopping at M10
Yeah, and I
for
actually
right
talked
now.
to a competitor about a G12 type panel. It's mainly a product that's used on large utility at this point. It has a number of disadvantages. The panels are getting so large that the panel actually in a skid they come standing upright. So you'll have a tall skid.
Yeah,
For shipping, right? So you can't even double
yeah,
stack them anymore. You need special forklifts. You can't put them in a normal trucks anymore. It's got a number of disadvantages. So I hope it's not coming anytime soon. We're going to be at the M10 for a while, so let's see.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily any more efficient, as goes density, module density. So we just kind of consider that, a certain point, bigger isn't always better, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, that's kind of where that one's at. And this kind of shows again a little bit on the module side what the kind of progression has been with us over those different transitions of
yeah,
cell sizes, right? And so we're kind of in that M10 HIMO 5 size where you're seeing 54 cell, you're seeing 66 cell, you're seeing 72 cell split. But yeah, right. So that's sort of where we're sticking. The widths are looking like the same, but then as you configure the lengths a little differently, you're kind of going into square or more rectangular modules depending on. And so you can see now then that the 54 cell, that's obviously geared more towards residential just because of wattage and size, where you're kind of in that 400 and 400 plus watt module is turning more into a square module because the M10 cell has grown in width and you're
yeah,
going from a 60 cell to a 54 cell. So you've kind of chopped off a row and you're still getting to a higher wattage than you previously were at, which was like 375 and what have you. Yeah, so on here we're just sort of showing the 54 and the 72, but obviously
yeah,
there's the 66 in there as well. Yeah. Yeah, so from here talking a little bit more about the 54 cell, it really is at this point a very easy to handle module. It definitely has grown a little bit in width, and we're probably going to need to make transitions on the racking side to accommodate that.
yeah,
But I truly do feel that it's a very robust module at this point with regard to width and length and handleability, and durability as well. And the 54 cell, of course, is available, both black frame as well as full black module, black frame and black backsheet. And I
yeah.
think Danny, you were mentioning that it it's having a bigger uptake on the all black modules,
Yeah, for us,
more so than the black frame.
yeah, for us, we just trying to standardize around a fully black panel. I think it's what's more popular overall. Anyways, no end customer has ever complained about having a fully black panel, not a white backsheet. Uh, at least that I've heard of. I would be very surprised if they did. And as far as cost difference, we don't see really a difference from the supplier, in this case, you guys, between a white backsheet and a black backsheet on a cost per watt basis. The only difference is generally you may get 5 to 10 watts extra with the white backsheet because it'll flash test a little bit better. But overall, it's minimal extra production in the test environment. And I rather have one panel that for us, the more SKUs we have, the more margin we have to make as well, right? So uh, it's easier to stock as well and make sure we have stuff in stock all the time. So that's why we've standardized around the fully black panel.
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned there, when it comes to the black backsheet versus just white and the cost difference, part of that again is our ability to procure on a global level, and be able to kind of very closely. You'll notice that with a lot of our products, the costs they are different, but they're very tight. And the
Yeah.
reasoning for that, of course, is because we're able to do that and we can control all of the products that go into our modules on a kind of a global level to keep our costs competitive all the way through. And yeah, so these modules are the 54 cell are definitely ideal at this point, we feel, for like I mentioned, handleability, looks, the whole 9 yards. We feel like they're pretty much the entire package for
Yeah, and even
residential
even
and
as
some
far as
CNI choices.
even if we're comparing it again from a cost standpoint for installers versus the cost of per watt for a solar panel versus a larger commercial panel, LONGi has been really good at keeping it very similar. So the cost is very competitive on a fully black, which is something we, comparing it against other manufacturers where there's a bigger delta between a commercial and a residential. I think it's a very good way to make sure people are actually getting these panels in their hands and not trying to use a larger panel where this is much more visually pleasing, obviously, than a silver frame panel, 72 cell panel on a residential home. The cost savings with the larger panels with LONGi products will mainly come in with racking, and if you're using any sort of optimizer, that there's some savings there, obviously. But if we're looking at the actual cost per watt, it's very similar.
Yeah, yeah. And over time, we've kind of led the charge when it comes to consistently delivering high efficiency when it comes to conversion efficiency on the modules over the years too. And so it isn't, like you mentioned, always necessary to just kind of keep growing the modules in order to achieve what you're looking for. You can just sort of keep adding more density into the modules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is part of our R&D goal as well, as to make sure that we're always kind of looking to add the highest possible level of efficiency without going over when it comes to cost, right? So obviously what you produce in a lab and what your efficiencies are that you produce in a lab aren't always achievable on a multi-megawatt or gigawatt scale. But what you're doing at that point is kind of proving out a concept and trying to squeeze more conversion into a set area. And so that's generally what we've chosen to try and do. And even with some upcoming technologies over time, we're going to try and continue to do the same thing in that same L10 platform.
I'm looking forward to a 26.5% efficient solar panel.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because as goes commercially available product, if you kind of go back here, you're kind of looking at 21.25 to 22, right?
So get an
So
extra 5% out of it.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you consider that the total is 26 or the total is 22,
Mhm.
putting 4 more% is a massive jump,
Yeah.
right? Yep. Yeah, so that's exactly kind of where we try and make sure we position ourselves with part of the R&D, is that we're always looking to the future, to being able to get to the top and make sure that we're delivering the best possible products in any given market. I just want to jump into a little bit more about kind of where LONGi is positioned in the marketplace, kind of financially, and kind of how we square up with our competitors a little bit. And I'm sure you're all super familiar with seeing this triangle. But I kind of felt the need to kind of put that in there again, just to give a fully rounded perspective of kind of who LONGi is in the marketplace, kind of full full turn. So we've been at the top, and we were the first triple A rated module manufacturer financially, and that happened in 2018. And since then, we've had a couple of competitors kind of join in, but they join in and they leave again. LONGi joined in, and we're staying there. So we kind of intend to kind of stay there as sort of one of our salutes to excellence. And again, it's not a greedy thing. It's so that we're there for you 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, to service what we've put into the industry and what we believe to move forward. So, some of this also kind of indicates who's kind of with us in the group, and where we kind of rank there, and LONGi kind of tops the list from all these perspectives, and all of this is sourceable information as well that you can find independently. And please, if you do have any questions about it, or you do have more questions to figure out the longevity or where we place in the market, we've got tons of information to back that up as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, this is just kind of coming back to, some of the lifetime performance and extended warranty, where we've kind of gone, as you can see, where the marketplace has gone from like 20-year warranties to 25-year warranties, and now we're in the 30-year warranty, and the LID numbers keep changing as well over time. So we keep increasing those numbers, and increasing what the warranty is going to be on that product by the end of a 25 or a 30-year period. So not only are we warranting for longer periods of time, we're increasing what the performance is going to look like at the end of that period as well. So when you're looking at these warranty and data sheets, it's also important to kind of look at the final number that we're warranting for at the end of 25 years and at the end of 30 years, because that's really what gets you to your LCOE. Yeah. So that's a little bit about that extended portion there. I was just going to ask if you have any questions, or if anybody has any questions a little bit about LONGi at this point, or globally, about our performance or our commitments.
I think a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory, right? So I'm sure as questions come up, people will ask them if there are any.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty standard stuff and pretty exciting stuff to see, the bankability and all of that goes with it. I think it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I mentioned, kind of on the short term, as goes sort of, well, where LONGi's been since 2000, where we're going, where we've been then as far as 2020, and then our view and look into the future as a company. We see a responsibility to be a global leader when it comes to renewables and for carbon neutral, and including getting into green hydrogen technology, and making sure that we ourselves are playing our part and that we're carbon neutral as well. And so, all of these things make a difference. We can't just talk the talk without walking the walk. So we're going to make sure that we as a company are supporting those initiatives, and while also putting research and development into supporting where we think the market is going, in order to keep our planet's temperature to a sustainable number, right? So the only way to get there is to kind of look forward and start looking at different technologies that we think are going to play a major part in the diversification of energy over time. And one of those things, of course, is green hydrogen, right? Because we feel as a company that it has to play a part in the energy mix. It can't necessarily just be solar modules. And so anything that we're looking at in order to achieve what our goals are as a company for our commercial customers and customers around the world, that has to be part of it too. So last year, as kind of like our first year of bringing green hydrogen into the mix, I think we produced about 300 megawatts worth of product to do with that technology. And we fully intend to get into gigawatts of green hydrogen products as well, moving into the future.
We had a couple of questions. Well, it's same question from both Al and John. about any plans on any recycling programs for solar panels?
Yeah, so LONGi is always looking for industry partners when it comes to recycling. And we're actively kind of researching a couple of companies in Canada right now that can kind of help with that. And again, it would be as a sort of a global approach, right? Because we're not necessarily just researching for LONGi, we're researching for all of the other companies that we support as well. So we're always looking for local recycling and ways to recycle off of larger scale utility farm, et cetera. And it doesn't always mean that the modules are going to be dismantled. It just might mean that they're being repurposed.
Yeah.
So
And
we are actively looking at that now. So we wouldn't necessarily head it up directly, but we would kind of work alongside with industry partners that are geared specifically for that.
I know
Yep.
we had a situation with another module manufacturer where they had a bunch of panels delaminated and it was under warranty, and they ended up just paying the customer money to get new panels. And the old panels, they were kind of left with to do what they want. So they contacted us and we put them in contact with a European company that repurposed those panels and sent them to a facility in Europe to put a new backsheet on, and then they were sent to Africa
Beautiful.
to be used
Yep.
there. So there's definitely lots of things out there that people are doing
Yep.
um, for those things. And um, Mike was talking
Yeah.
earlier about the 30-year, 25, 30-year warranty and what what the actual amount of um, usable wattage is left that is warranted. I think it was like 88% after 25 years. I mean, these panels are still perfectly fine, right? So and there's definitely still a use for them. Hopefully, they're also going to be used and not just put in a landfill at that point.
Yeah, when you consider what that means after 30 years, as goes like the efficiency of that module in 30 years, that efficiency after 30 years is still greater than the efficiency of modules 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, much bigger, much bigger. Yeah,
Right? So
but
kind of when you put it into that perspective, and people had no problem doing utility scale projects
yeah.
with that efficiency of module, it's sort of like, okay, that's perspective, right?
Yeah, I still remember first panel I sold was two 25-watt panels, and that was like 2013 or so. So
Nice.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. We've come a long way from 225, and I know other people selling 180-watt panels and things like that and at $4 a watt at the time, to getting down into the 50-cent range Canadian now for 500-watt plus panels, right? It's
Absolutely.
quite exciting.
I mean, even with the FIT program in Ontario, I think some of those projects were using thin film modules, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
So, I mean, wow, they were looking at about 12 to 13% efficiency, right?
I,
And
I,
still got used.
Yeah, I know a lot of well, thin film is a whole different discussion. I know of a bunch of projects in Ontario that were built with thin film, and a lot of them have they're I think a lot of them actually were they took off the thin film and put in photo, photovoltaic silicone based solar panels
Yeah, we got asked
recently.
about a few refits
Yeah,
on a couple of different projects
I know.
for exactly that reason, because they're
Yeah,
20-year PPAs, right? So
correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So they're
So.
only halfway through the life of that site, right? As those return.
Yeah, and panel wattages have gone up and costs have gone down, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. And with a lot of the developers, if they're owning and operating, they're looking at it going, the project's already paid for itself. It was a very rich PPA, so let's see what we can do for the second half.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very exciting. So yeah, I think that is the end of the presentation, right?
Yeah,
From
yeah,
one of our
that's it
slides.
from
Yeah,
my side. And again, I just wanted to say thank you very much for having us. It's an honor to be represented by Franken, and thank you very much for all of your solid work that you've done throughout Canada.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I would ask you, like, obviously, with you've probably seen the ITC and looked a little bit into it. Like, what do you see the challenges being on the supply side coming up with this?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, again, it's really always about communication. But as goes our ability to supply, kind of as some of the slides kind of indicated, we're always typically ahead. Like our capacity is always typically ahead of what's required within the market, and so we try and plan for, explosive growth potentials, whether they happen in Canada or whether they happen on another uh, country or continent. So that's sort of our model, is being kind of kind of tuned in, ear to the ground for different things that are happening, and as goes our capability or our capacity to supply for situations like that. It's really just a matter of good communication between us and distributors to say, okay, we see this coming, we see this for projection for growth, and then we just make sure that we can accommodate for it.
Yeah.
Right
So,
now, if we were to double requirements for Canada, we could do that.
oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, the question comes down to like what's, lead times and things like that distributors are facing. I think it's important for solar installers to also know that, right? So we have generally like you have production schedules, right, where you produce for the Canadian market, right?
That's right. So that's
Yep.
the communication part where you really need to kind of keep in touch with your distributor, and as a dealer, to say this is what we see coming down the pike as well. Because on the short term, when you might see growth like this, we can't just have product on the ground, instantly. It is a process and it does take time. So the more notice that you can give to Danny, the better, because then you can kind of put your name on certain volumes or quarters of his warehouse there, because it's not something that can just happen overnight. We have to, obviously plan for it, take orders, get the product in through the lines, and get them over here from Vietnam typically. Um, and so that process just unto itself is a 3-4 month process. And as we're coming into our busy season now, Danny has already taken huge steps to making sure that there's going to be product available right away coming into the spring and summer. But with this growth, the more notice, the better,
Yeah,
always.
and usually we order a bunch and a bunch of that sells before it gets here, right? So, what I would recommend to people is, regardless if it's us or another distributor or other modules from another distributor or us, like I think it's important at this time, both for residential and commercial customers, to plan well in advance as this industry is growing. We're actually in a pretty good situation in Canada compared to, for example, Europe, where lead times are way longer. We're all a little bit spoiled at times in Canada, us included, that the lead times are not as crazy as what we see in, for example, Europe. Can't really speak for the US, but I know Alex. And those of you that know Alex here, he's our in-house electrical engineer. He helped his uncle build a project in Germany, and he just finally got delivered his modules late last year. And the lead time was 9 months, basically. The inverters he's still waiting on, and as well as the batteries for the project. So lead times in Europe are really, really crazy. He actually had to bring Schledder clamps from here for the project because the Schledder distributor didn't have any mid and end clamps. And he looked at multiple locations. So Europe is crazy busy in the solar industry. Of course, we're
Yeah.
getting busier and busier as well, but just keep in mind, plan in advance as much as you can. It's really, really important. John had a question about AC modules. Do you want to tackle that, or you want me to tackle that, Mike?
Um, I know they're in the mix as far as R&D, but It's not something we've kind of released here for the Canadian market yet. So I mean, if you wanted to jump on that one for now, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I mean, what I can talk about it is, I mean, AC modules have been talked about for a very long time, and we've seen them off and on. We've seen AC modules where manufacturer partner with Enphase, for example, and they produced an AC module. We've seen DC optimized modules where companies partner with like a Solar Edge or a Tyco and integrated an optimizer into the module. What I would say about it is it never really became a major thing and a consistent thing because it has a number of downsides. One is that generally every time we have seen it, the AC module was significantly more expensive than buying a normal DC residential module and buying the microinverter separate. There was no cost savings or any advantages on that side. Also, if we're looking at annual failures, modules are a very reliable product. There are very few module failures out there. I'm
Yeah.
sure most of you guys have installed solar panels. Doesn't matter which manufacturer, most of you guys haven't seen a crazy amount of failures there, if any. Um,
Yep.
if you're installing a microinverter or an optimizer, you're replacing these things all the time. And now you have many more truck runs. Now you have to ship a whole panel out to a site to be replaced as opposed to just doing a microinverter or an optimizer. So there's a number of downsides on that as well. So personally, I don't, just like Tesla shingles, I don't expect this to be a major thing for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I'd probably kind of somewhat second that. Especially based on those points, right? It's so difficult to couple those two together and keep one as reliable as the other because modules are sort of like they take a licking and they keep on ticking type product, whereas the others have a shelf life and have quite a few DOAs as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I it's a
Do
tough
you
one.
have do you have any numbers on failure rates on modules?
It's so low. It's nearly
Yeah.
minuscule.
I've
But
had
on a
I've had an
utility scale,
yeah,
we typically, and it's not necessarily a failure rate. It's more to do with entire rates on the job.
yeah,
So on a utility job, between accidents that might happen on site to the module themselves with like lifting and potholes and
yeah.
deliveries and whatnot, we would kind of bank on about a 1/4% on a utility
But
scale.
that
But
includes everything. That includes
everything.
installation, everything. What I've heard from actual failures of the actual module that is not has nothing to do with human input.
Yeah.
You're looking at from another manufacturer. They were talking parts per million, like they were talking 80 parts per million. Is actual
Yeah,
annual failure rate of a module. There's no moving parts. There's not much that can go wrong once the actual panel is installed on a roof.
that's right. And realistically, if it's not a DOA module,
Yeah.
uh, it's typically good for the next 30 to 50 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, then there was a question about the upper lip on the LONGi module. We've seen from another manufacturer that there is a narrow lip at the top, or even no lip at all at the top of the panel, so on the short side of the panel. Is that
Mhm.
something that the LONGi module has, the 405s, or is it the same all the way around on the inside of the panel?
Oh, I'd have to look at the cut sheet on the new frame for that and just kind of see what the I may actually have to look at technical and get further down into the frame because sometimes the cut sheet doesn't totally show it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it, but I can definitely get back to whoever needs the answer to
Uh,
show the full technical blow up
Yeah, and
of the
we're
module
expecting the
frame.
first shipment of panels within about 4 weeks. So I
Okay.
would know for sure at that point.
Yep.
As to the
I'll look
purpose
into it ahead of time. Yep.
as to the purpose of the thicker piece of rail there or frame, I think it
Mhm.
probably has to do with strength. That's my gut
Yep.
feeling. It
Yep.
probably has to do with strength because they're going thinner and thinner. So if you're looking at a panel now, Do you know the thickness of the 405s? Is it a 30 or 32 millimeter or 35 millimeter?
Again, I have to just kind of look on the
I'll have to
spec here.
quickly
It's
look
not on
that
the
up.
presentation, yeah, to
Yeah, I'd
see the
have to
mill, but
quickly.
it's probably a 30.
Yeah,
But I
it's
just
probably
have to
30.
double check.
So the reason is to reduce shipping cost.
Yep.
The panels are getting thinner and thinner. So, um, which, at
Yeah.
the end of the day is really important for everyone. We're always trying to reduce costs. So, and shipping and environmental impact and everything that goes with that. So that is why we probably see that, and I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I would assume is why we see the thicker frame at the top.
Yeah, and like
Because
as goes shipping, that's a good point. Like over the years, you can see how we've moved from 24 to 25 to 28 to 30 modules on a pallet, and now we're doing 31s on
I think it
pallets
may
as
be,
well.
I think it may even be 36 on these. I'm just trying to find the
Right.
data sheet. And
Yeah.
the 36 would mean that it's a 30 millimeter probably.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the spec sheet now on another screen here. Give me 1 second. I'm almost there.
Yeah, you bet.
Um, if in the meantime we can ask, there may be another question. A question about, do you carry backup for single failure panels that are no longer produced? We do not, and I don't think anyone does. And I think that is a general problem in this industry. Margins in from a distributor side, as well as probably from a manufacturer standpoint, won't allow for that, right? We'd have to have, if you look at all the modules that we've carried at Frankensolar over the last 11 years of our existence in Canada, we will probably have 100 some odd solar panels laying around in our
Yeah.
warehouse, and you'd have to have multiple ones because you'll probably won't have just one, and because generally people need replacements not because of the failure of the panel, but there is something that happened
It got hit
with
or yeah.
it got hit with something, hailstorm, um, who knows, right? Someone decided to throw a baseball at it and it broke for whatever reason, although a baseball probably wouldn't break it, but there's I've heard people shooting it with guns, right? Some neighbor didn't like solar and they shoot at the solar panel with a gun.
We're not in
So
Alberta here, Danny.
yeah, I was gonna make an Alberta joke about it, but I'm better about it. So going back
Just
to the
another day on the
panels.
life of an Albertan.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about the US as well about some of that stuff since a lot of people have guns down there. So, 30 millimeter frame on the on the
Oh,
the
you've got it
Longi.
open. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about the frame, if it's the same all the way around or not. Yeah, it's a thin frame as well.
Okay.
Yeah, just looking at the data sheet here, it looks like it's thinner at the top, which means it's thicker too, I think, generally. Like it's a little bit stronger. So it looks thinner on a sheet, but it's for strengthening. It's a thicker piece of aluminum.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions before we're done here? Good stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I want to remind everyone that we do have that warehouse show at the end of April in Ontario. For people out of province, if you can't make it, totally understand. We are going to replicate that in other provinces throughout the year and years to come. We're probably going to try to do one of these every half year or so in a different part of the country. First one is based in our home base here, but then we're going to take that across the country for sure. We have great speakers there, and LONGi is actually going to be the network sponsor for that event as well, which is going to be really exciting. Going to have a big event after all the presentations and everything are done on the first day, and we're going to go somewhere and have some drinks and some food and everything. So if you want to attend, be very happy to have you there as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mike and Ali, for making this happen.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you all for listening and having me.
Good stuff. Have a good one, everyone.